welcome back. Or this might be the first video. I'm not sure. But I do know that this is going to be the first in a series of videos that where we look into big questions. Today we're going to look at the Big Bang, or the creation, or the big first thing that ever happened. And we're going to try to look at it from a couple of different perspectives. We're going to try to make two very different perspectives come together, maybe. I don't know, we're going to try to see if there's a crossover. Anyway, first and foremost, I just want to let you guys know that I kind of tend to see things through an anthropological lens. All right, that is my formal training.
Which means, what does that mean?
Anthropology?
Yeah.
Anthropology, well, as you can see right up here, is the study of human life and culture.
Oh, I didn't even look up at
Yeah.
that.
And you know what that means? The study of people stuff.
Like, the first people, like, as some people know?
Sure.
Like Adam and Eve. That, even though it's probably not what happened.
Well, I mean, I don't know if
Some theories
we can
say
actually
like
study Adam and Eve beyond what's, written in the Old Testament, in the Bible, but the idea that anthropology studies human stuff just means that you're literally studying anything that humans make or do.
Like DNA.
Yeah. Some physical anthropologists look at DNA. Some genetic anthropologists look at DNA. I'm more of a cultural anthropologist. I don't have a PhD. I don't even have a master's degree, but I do have a bachelor's degree in anthropology and secondary ed, which is why I'm kind of doing this educational video.
Can anthropology even be about like diseases that humans have?
Yeah.
Like cancer.
Yep.
Or like a disabled thing?
Yeah.
Like if you were in a wheelchair?
Yeah.
So it's like everything that a human could possibly do. Even writing, or is that not part
Yes.
of it?
You can study the invention of writing. You can study different languages.
That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that's why I'm doing it. So anyway, so that's the idea. Anthropology is the study of human stuff. Now you've probably heard of archaeology. That's the study of old people's stuff. So stuff that happened way in the past. Stuff that happened a long time ago.
Like,
Or actually, it doesn't have to be all that long ago. Now that I'm thinking about it.
like Laura Ingalls?
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So anyway, that's the study of old people stuff. They're still anthropologists. They're just studying old people stuff. But anyway, that's the perspective I'm coming from. So I'm not necessarily coming from a historical perspective. I'm trying to come from a holistic perspective of looking at all of human knowledge when it comes to the beginnings of things.
So you're saying other people might have a different angle of it?
No, everyone has their own different angle.
Yeah.
There's as many different angles as there are people. So
That's
yeah.
a lot of different angles.
There are, but I'm gonna try to take a view that is broad as possible, and tries to include a lot of the things from Western civilization and try to make them mesh, because a lot of people think they don't mesh, but we're gonna show today that they do, or they can. It all depends on how you think about it. So when you're looking at things from an anthropological perspective, you're looking at it from a human behavior perspective. So if we're going to look at the beginning, if we're going to look at the beginning of time, okay, the beginning of everything, we have to understand that it's all based on human behavior. Humans studying things, humans measuring things, humans inventing measuring tools. Okay?
Like, cavemen had to use rocks for everything. Like, not everything, but they used it for a lot of things, like these skidding animals.
Oh yeah, so there's tools.
Hunting.
Right, so humans make tools. But I'm talking about, like, specifically, dating technology. Because we're going to talk about the beginning. So we have to figure out how we know what's the beginning. So how do we know what the beginning is? Well, 400 years ago, 1,000 years ago, in the Western world, people thought that the world was 6,000 years old. And look, I know many people might still think that the world is only 6,000 years old. And that's fine. That's fine. Just imagine what I'm going to say right now is just a story. and you don't have to remember it. It's just another way of looking at things, right? It's another set of humans having another explanation for something. Okay,
Correct me if I'm wrong, but like, wasn't the Earth around for like millions and millions of years before humans came along?
Well, that's what the science shows now. The science does show now that we have been here for, this planet's been here for billions of years.
Like how long?
I don't know.
You don't have to know the exact.
I don't know. I have no idea. You'd have to look that up. I am not a geologist. I have not studied geology. I mean, I studied a little bit of geology, but not a lot. Okay, so how do we know how old stuff is? Well, the idea is that back in the day, they would use the Bible. Because the Bible says, well, we can actually take a look here. Boop. Go right over to the Bible. And I'm using the New International Version. Now, the reason I'm using the New International Version is because back in the 70s when they found the Nag Hammadi library and they found the, all these different fragments fragments of the Bible that were from that time period. They're the oldest fragments of the Bible we've ever found, in some cases.
Where did they find that?
In a place called Nag Hammadi, it was a cave, and there was a jar, and it was filled with all these scrolls, and a lot of them were books that are in the Bible, and some of them that weren't in the Bible.
That's like so cool. Like imagine just coming across that, like, oh, hi kitten, can I go out?
Cat wants to go out. Anyway, so the idea is, when they made this discovery and they started, pulling this apart, these archaeologists took painstaking, and I think in some cases they're still putting this stuff together. I think I could be wrong. It could be done by now. Getting old, so I'm not sure, but I do know that it took them a really long time, and some things were being published back in. Things are still being published in the early 2000s. I remember the book of Mary Magdalene was published, and the book of Judas. These are books that aren't in the Bible. I don't know if everybody knows this, but there were over 50 Gospels referred to throughout history, even though there's only 4 in the Bible. So it would be really interesting if we ever found all those to read that. It might give us a clearer view of that time period. So, because these fragments were found and those could be linked up with the oldest fragments of the oldest known copies of the Bible, they were able to make what is probably one of the most scholarly translations of the Bible. Now, I know there's a lot of argument about it, and everyone has their own preferences. I'm going to use the New International Version because of this reason. Okay, because in my opinion, and maybe it's out of date, but it seems to me this is a really good place to go if you're really trying to get the meaning of what these ancient wisdom tellers had to say. Okay, so we're going to look at the New International Version, and of course this is Genesis 1. This is the beginning, right? I mean, it says it right there. The beginning. There it is, right? So it says, in the beginning. Well, it's official. It's the beginning. And it goes through the first 6 days of creation. And now see, here's the thing. So this is why people believed that the world was 6,000 years old. Or some people still do today. Believe that the world is 6 or maybe 7,000 years old. And it's because what they did is they went to the book of Genesis, they counted those 6 days, and then they added up all the time that happens in the Bible, and they came up to about 6,000 and change years.
Wow, so that's how long it took them to write the Bible?
No, that's how old they thought the universe was. They thought all existence was 6,000 years old, and it was based on the Bible.
What about dinosaurs, man?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. These ancient writers didn't necessarily know about dinosaurs. They may have known about dragons or ogres or other things and giant bones they found in the ground, but they didn't know that they were dinosaurs.
I don't understand why people would still think that today.
Well, the Chinese, in many parts of China, they still call dinosaur bones dragon bones.
And, you're not stupid at all if you would think that in the beginning.
No, it's just cultural. It's just what they don't refer to them as dinosaurs. The Chinese are a 5,000-year-old culture, maybe even older.
That's amazing.
But they've been referring to those bones as dragon bones since time immemorial. So
And I do see how they think that because if
it's just silly that we call them dinosaurs.
yeah,
It's silly that we call them terrible lizards.
but like if
Dragons are so
we
much
didn't
cooler.
know dinosaurs is a thing, even if we did back in the beginning of like when we first figured it out, that would be super scary. And since they were thinking it was dragons, that's like proof for them that they were real, and they were probably freaking out.
It still is proof for them.
Yeah.
They're not freaking out. They're just like, well, it's just dragon bones. So the NIV, Genesis 1, in the beginning. Let's look at this, because I don't think a day means what people think a day means. Right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But what are you picturing?
Like what do you mean by I picture?
Well, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Like, what do you imagine in your mind?
The first thing that comes to mind, I know God probably doesn't really have a form or shape, but when I was little, I always saw those statues of Jesus,
Yep.
and I always thought that's what God looks like, so now it's an imprinted thing in my mind that looks exactly like Jesus.
Okay, so we've established what God looks like, so what else are you picturing?
In my mind.
Okay.
And I would think like maybe him holding his hands up, like almost above his head.
Like this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of stars in different colors, like a galaxy color.
Okay.
Probably not what it looked like.
Now what about the earth? So the heavens, now what about the earth?
I mean, Earth? Like I know what Earth looks like.
So that's what you're picturing?
Yeah.
Of the earth? Okay.
I'm actually picturing a cartooner.
Well, that's fair enough. But when this was written,
There was no cartoon.
who knows if that's what they were talking about? Because look, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, the earth was formless and empty. So now what are you picturing?
Now I'm picturing maybe some water, because I know that the Earth is
But
mostly
wouldn't water be a form?
Yeah. No,
Form of water!
I mean, I guess I'm just kind of wiggling. Thinking of some wiggly substance, kind of wiggling around in the middle of space.
Alright, that's
That
interesting.
looks a little bit like Earth. Probably not what it looks
Keep
like.
that in your head. That's interesting. So, now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters.
Comment down below what you think it looks like.
Comment down below what you think it looks like. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, what is that? Now the earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters.
Sounds a little bit scary, but I mean.
Well, you gotta remember, the earth and the heavens were formless.
Again, yeah, I'm imagining Jesus just
Right,
hovering
right.
over the
But
waters.
so like, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, it doesn't say if God even looks like anything.
I would think maybe more like a wind. Flowing
Well,
with the
who
wind.
knows? I mean, it says formless and empty, right?
Yeah.
So now, if I'm thinking of that, I'm like, I don't get it. Formless and empty. I don't know.
empty.
Space?
There's nothing there.
Space?
Yeah. Nobody. Every like second, the universe, everything, space, all that gets bigger, a little bit bigger.
Right, but that's after.
A mile bigger. I'm
But
pretty
that's
sure.
after the Big Bang, right?
I might be wrong, but every 15 seconds, I'm pretty sure it gets like a mile bigger.
I have no idea.
I might be wrong. I'm probably wrong.
I don't know.
I know some matter of time it gets a mile bigger every.
Well, I'm sure that's true. I don't
I
know.
might be wrong, and I heard it from
I'm
a
not an
bad source.
astrophysicist. I cannot talk to these matters. I am not an astrophysicist.
What I'm saying is, I only have one source, and I don't even know if that source is good. So I mean,
No, that's fair enough.
check your sources, man.
That's fair enough. All right. So let there be light,
Light.
and there was light. But here's the thing.
That's what-
I don't want to get ahead of us. I mean, that's a really exciting part. Let there be light, right? That's really
Oh.
exciting, right?
Everyone
But-
always says
but look,
that now.
Yeah, they do. But I mean, here's the thing.
Not okay.
Here's a look at the Big Bang. All right, so here these are artist renderings. These aren't necessarily what it was.
It's just what people think it maybe look like.
Right, but I mean,
like how I was saying how I
this is
think
like,
it looks like Jesus,
I mean, this is
maybe. This is what people are thinking it might look like.
you know, this is the Big Bang expansion, and you know, the 13 billion years.
That's pretty legit, man.
Right, quantum fluctuations right here. Okay, this, I don't even know what this means. It's exciting though. I mean, it's very cool. I mean, that looks cool. That's like a meme. I don't know. But anyway, the Big Bang, right? It's just, here's the thing. So,
no one really knows.
this is what science says. I say, no. Scientists, and look, I agree.
I had to have
And people
someone,
who
right?
and people who believe in science and people who study science, this is what they say. The Big Bang. Now they can't say why it happened, and well, it doesn't really matter why it happened. It happened, right? All of a sudden there was something. The Big Bang. I mean, I don't know. I kind of like this one here. This looks pretty cool.
Oh, that
Looks
looks
like something out of like an X-Men movie. It's pretty exciting. But anyway, you know, scientists only have like guesses about what causes it, whether it's an infinite loop and the universe expands and then contracts on itself and then blows up again and then contracts on itself and blows up again. And every time it does, you know, there's always this speculation about people living their, you know, the same lives over and over again, or the same consciousness being woven back out into the pattern. I mean, if you look into different civilizations around the planet, like in Indian history or mythology, whatever you want to consider it, you know,
reincarnation.
Yeah, but I mean, but also for all of existence, it's just this wheel that keeps happening. It's just this cycle. It just keeps going around.
The circle of life.
Well, I mean, look, it's kind of a circle. I mean, it's kind of like when you drop water. You know, you just drop water in space or in the air, it turns into a bubble. You know, turns into a pumpkin. Not really, but you know, it's October, so what are you gonna do? Hey, can I have some chai if you got it over there? That'd be really cool. All right. So anyway. This is interesting. 5 alternatives to the Big Bang Theory. I'm not going to give you any alternatives to the Big Bang Theory, okay? What I'm going to say is, the Big Bang Theory sounds good to me. That sounds good, makes sense, okay? Something blew up, and we are now in that explosion, right? If you want to imagine that, if you want to imagine any kind of fire, any kind of explosion, any kind of little thing, you could almost assume that the universe is kind of like that. Like if you could look down deep inside that little tiny explosion, who knows? You might see something like this. I know people think about that when they've stayed up too late or done other things.
It's like,
it is, but it's cool to think about, right?
It's a mind twister.
Then you just think about infinity, you know? Yeah, have that. Yeah, try to figure that one out.
There's never, like there would never be an infinity cord.
Yeah.
And they say that on commercials, but it's... So
I'm not trying to look for alternatives to Big Bang Theory. I'm thinking that the Big Bang Theory works fine, but oh my goodness, it may not contradict the Bible. Or the Bible may not contradict the Big Bang Theory. However you want to look at it.
The Bible had it though.
Well, let's look at this. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Now, if I was really creative, maybe I'd draw something like that. I mean, who's to say that, you know, God hovering over the waters and in the deep, and, you know, earth was formless. I mean, if it was formless, that means it was kind of an idea. It wasn't even like a thing yet, because it wasn't a form. You know what I'm saying? It's not a form yet. It hasn't formed. So it's just a thought. So God's like thinking. And in my mind, you know, I see something like this. I see like, all of a sudden, things, matter, reality, existence, poof, isness. Whatever isness. So the next thing to happen is that God says, let there be light. Right? And God said, let there be light. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know what God's voice sounds like, right? I just, you know, I have this weird conception because I've seen too many Renaissance paintings of a big bearded dude in a flowing sheet with sandals on going, oh, like touching Adam and like bringing him back to life. You know what I mean? So I just assume in the back of my head that God's a dude, but here's the thing. It doesn't say anywhere in here that God is a dude. It doesn't say anywhere in here that God is a human form. We'll get to something that's close.
He's a man, he's a woman, he's a tree, he's a pumpkin.
You know what God says He is in what was it? I want to say it was
A bush?
Exodus.
Fire bush.
Well, He didn't say I'm a bush. I am a bush on fire. No, He didn't say that. What He said was, I am that I am.
Confusing. But
No, He just is. Isness. He is that He is.
that's what I was saying.
God is. He just is.
Like,
Is.
he's kind of...
And I'm saying He, but I don't even need to say he because God is genderless, right? He's beyond gender. He's a lot. I don't know. I'm not an
It's
expert.
just easier to give him a gender.
I don't know things. I don't know things all the time. Sometimes I know things.
It's just easier to give him a gender, like, say he.
It is easier. It is easier.
Then
Language is tough
say-
sometimes. See, it's really hard to really nail down what something means, right? I mean, that's one of the things that Plato struggled with. Well, not struggled with. This is one of the things Plato knew, like what is love? What is justice? You know, it's these are big concepts. Try to describe what a chair is. I don't know. You think it's easy? Good. Try to describe what a chair is. I'm not going to wait. I'm going to move on. But
Yeah.
so God said, "Let there be light." So the first thing that really happened was light, right? That was the first thing to take form, was
Because,
light.
like, if you go back to the Big Bang thing, it's... Most of these
Well,
had, like, stars.
here's what I want you to look
bright
at.
lights and stuff.
Here's what I want you to look at. These are Hubble telescope images of hydrogen gas clouds, right? Interstellar
They're
dust.
beautiful.
All right, so this is kind of what I envision when I'm thinking of what happened directly after the Big Bang. Like right as soon as time began, right? You get like this stuff that just kind of oozes out of existence. It's just, here it is, you know, just kind of comes out like that. That's what I'm picturing. Because the first thing to come into creation was hydrogen, the atom, right? The atom hydrogen, the single nucleus, single electron atom hydrogen. And it's just billowing out in
Wait, is that where they
clouds.
say Adam and Eve?
I don't
Like
think so.
Adam as one of the first
No,
names?
atom, which is Greek, which means smallest possible thing, which the atom isn't the smallest possible thing. But the Greeks thought that's what the word means, so the smallest possible thing should be called an atom because that's what it means, but atom as opposed to Adam, which actually comes from Adamu, which actually means humans. So anyway, so this hydrogen gas cloud, right, it comes poofing out of wherever, the Big Bang. This is the first thing that happened. And you have nothing but hydrogen. Just clouds and clouds of hydrogen. So there's nothing in existence but these little hydrogen atoms. And these hydrogen atoms have these, like, little bits of gravity. And, you know, this is a simple man trying to explain this, okay? So I'm sure there's people out there who can explain this way better than I can, okay? But I'm just going to give you kind of the Cliff Notes version. So there's just these little atoms floating in these giant clouds, right? But they have, like, a little bit of, like, gravity type stuff in it. And it kind of comes together and it kind of attracts itself until it gathers into this really big ball, and the hydrogen atoms in the middle of this big ball just get squished, and all this pressure starts building and building and building until in the middle of that ball, two of those hydrogen atoms fuse together. They fuse together and create the first helium atom.
Like what you put in balloons?
Like what you put in balloons.
So it's like, if
I'm going to blow your mind in a second.
okay, but if you like take apple, and then you take a masher, and you smash them together, you make applesauce. It's like that, except, I don't know, it's kind of like in Minecraft.
Well, the interesting thing with this is that those two hydrogen atoms coming together and becoming now two nuclei and two electrons, it releases ridiculous amounts of energy, and it has a cascade effect that all of a sudden it starts linking these other hydrogen atoms, and all of a sudden you have this crazy fusion effect, and you have the first star. Oh, bless you. God bless you. So yeah, so the first star is created. So the first thing that that visibly happens in existence.
And we can't even see it because we're not here yet.
No.
But
but the point is the very first thing was, let there be light. A star. Because a star is the first light. So you couldn't actually see this before the first star because there was no light, so you couldn't see anything. It was just everything was darkness, emptiness, the void, right? Over the deep, the waters of the deep. So if we're going back to Genesis, right? God said, let there be light, and there was light. God saw that the light was good, which is an interesting thing if we want to start talking about Plato down the line. We'll start talking about the good.
In another video.
Way in another video. But the good and the light. Okay?
Can't be going forever.
Yeah, because we're going to see there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that was actually influenced by Plato. And Plato was actually influenced by some of the writings of the early Hebrews. So, very interesting, Western civilization. But, here we go. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. Right? So, for the first time, you now have a duality. You have the two thing. You have the light and the not light.
Like how right now it's nighttime, but there's not as much light during the daytime.
Yeah.
Sun.
Right, but I mean that's only because we're being shaded by the Earth, because the Earth is between us and the sun.
The sun is on the other side of the Earth right now. Well, kind of making its way to the other side.
Well, really, the Earth just turned.
Like skirt.
It's not on the other side of the Earth. The other side of the Earth turned towards the sun. But to us, it seems the other way. And we'll get to that. We'll get to Galileo and Copernicus way down the line. But anyway. So, God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning. Oh, the first day. But understand something. The first day still doesn't have a formed earth.
So
there is no formed earth yet.
So we wouldn't really... I don't know. It's confusing.
Well, that's right. It is a little confusing because
beginning.
Because are we talking about 24-hour periods if the Earth isn't even created in a form by the first day? The first day can't be 24 hours because the Earth isn't there to turn 24 hours in a day cycle. Right? 24-hour it takes for the Earth to spin, right? From the sun to come up and go back down again, right?
I think it's so cool how the world works.
It is pretty cool.
It's
but the point is that there was no globe, there was no Earth yet. It hasn't even been formed yet. So, the first day has come and gone by. That was the whole creation of the sun. Okay? And God said, let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water. And evidently he did this, and he sprinkled some glitter magic. And yeah. Or not. Or it could be. I don't know. Let there be a vault between the waters and separate water from water. And I gotta tell you, in my mind, this is what I'm seeing again. I'm seeing this.
Water?
Well, I'm seeing something like this, right? So, like, if I were to type in, I don't know, let's get crazy. Let's do something like this. We'll say formation of a planet.
Let's see this.
This should be cool.
Wow, that's beautiful. Wow, that one looks like a...
Well, this is actually how we got the moon. Something like this happened when we got the moon. We got a little wackapoo. And the stuff that was left over was actually the moon.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. It's been whacked a few times. But the formation of the planet, the idea is like something like this, right? Where, like, those gases... Imagine, see this one here? This one's good. This one's good. So you have all these... I'm sorry? What?
Is that the Earth that the moon was hitting?
I'm not sure if that was the actual... I don't know if that was actually the Earth getting hit by some other body, and then the Earth, and then the moon was formed. I don't know if that was the Earth or if it was just showing the same kind of process.
That would be very crazy.
Yes, it would. But this is kind of like what I'm picturing. So the idea is that you have all this gas, and it's kind of like, out there in this big cloud, and it kind of congeals over time. Yeah, like Saturn, but like over time, that gas gets closer and closer and closer. Or
so is that what's going to happen to Saturn?
I don't know. I mean, it's quite possible. That's a great question for somebody who understands Saturn. I don't really know. But this is what I picture. I picture things and things like this where, it has gravity, so it yokes things out of orbit and...
Yokes.
Well, yoke, tractor beam. Maybe not that.
I love that noise.
Yeah. But the idea is that, the Earth finally starts to take form, right? So things start to congeal, things start to separate. So now you're starting to get like different elements. So this is the other interesting thing. So the next thing to happen after the Big Bang, after the first formation of the sun, the next thing to happen is that the first star explodes. And when the first star explodes, every other element that we know about is created in that crazy cataclysmic explosion.
So many explosions, like an action movie.
Well, I mean, dude, think of it this way. You are stardust. You are literally made up of exploded suns.
Brainchild.
And it's kind of cool. It's like, you have the power of the exploding stars in your veins, right?
Like that movie Stargirl. She called herself Stargirl because she's wanted to make a point that she was made of stardust.
Yeah, well, that's the idea. We're made of stardust.
Almost everything's made of stardust.
No, everything is made of stardust.
No,
everything. Everything in existence is made of stardust.
On Brainchild, so they took like 5-6 Legos, and they said
5 or 6 psychos?
Yeah, no Legos.
Legos.
And like all the types of things that humans are made of, or like that stardust stuff that came to the Earth, and they took them and they said, how many different patterns do you think you can make with these? And they would ask them to make a pattern. Almost all of them are different. And they told them the exact answer was like millions of them. Millions of different ones. And that's how everyday things were made like humans. Because they took stardust and made
I see what you're saying. You're saying that stardust just blasted out into space, and eventually it would kind of congeal and turn into planets. And then on a planet like, say, Earth, things started to. Well, let's see what our ancient wise people said. And let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water. So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it. What?
Puzzling. What's a vault?
Well, vault is kind of like a dome almost. It's almost like a ceiling, right? It's like a vaulted ceiling, or it's like a space, right? It's just this idea of something, and I'm doing this because I don't know how to describe this, right? But this, so the idea is that those get divided, right? So you start getting the Earth, and then you start getting space. And there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. Well, you notice we don't actually have an Earth yet. All we have is like sky. I mean, sky. We have sky. That's what we have. So, and God said, let the water under the sky be gathered into one place. The water under the sky be gathered in one place. And I'm still picturing things like this. I'm still picturing these formation of planets, because I mean, this is what we're talking about. And I did go to school and I saw some science stuff, and I have the internet, so this is what I'm picturing. All right? Generated waters, or gathered the waters, he called the seas, and God saw that it was good. So now maybe we have something, right? We have dry ground, and we have water. So we have the seas, and we have land. So now I'm thinking, okay, and God saw that it was good, right? Now this is the third day. Then God said, let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees on the lands that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds. And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seeds according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruits with seeds in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning. That's the third day. So the third day is really the day you get when you get this thing that we kind of recognize as the Earth, right? It's got seas, it's got dry land, it's got vegetation, so it's got mineral and vegetable and all the 20 questions, stars. So that's the idea, the third day. So if we don't get the Earth till the third day, how can these days be 24-hour periods? Well, they can't really be 24-hour periods. Because there was no Earth to rotate 24 hours by which to measure these time periods. And even when the Earth is created, I mean, if you talk to people who know about this stuff, they will tell you that the Earth did not spin at the same rate as it does now. So it wasn't even a 24-hour period. We didn't get a 24-hour period until after we got smacked by whatever hit us that created the moon. And that's when things started slowing down or sped up, or I want to say slowed down, but I could be wrong about that. So anyway, third day, and God said, "Let there be lights in the vault in the sky to separate the day from night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years, and let them be lights. Let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light to the earth." And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the vault in the sky to give them light on earth, to govern the day and night, and to separate the night from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 4th day. Okay? So, the 4th day, to me, kind of seems like that's when atmosphere is created. Because now you can start to see the disk in the sky. So if you were on the Earth, you could start to see the disk in the sky. You can start to see the moon, the sun. You can start to see the stars. So now we have an atmosphere that actually allows us to see through. It's not this cloudy magma, blah, 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 with water fuming everywhere. So now we have something that's almost livable. Okay? So that kind of makes sense to my mind. And God said, "Let the water teem with living creatures." Now this is interesting, guys. Let the water teem with living creatures. It doesn't say let the land teem with living creatures. And I think that's important because I think we all know, if we studied our grade school science, that life came from the oceans, right? It came from those interesting little tide pools where you have these nucleotides and, what do they call them? Oh, it's a protein. And I can't think of the name of the protein right now. Protein. Amino acids. The building blocks of proteins. And those things would float around, and next thing you know, you have life, right? So God said, "Let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth and cross the vault of the sky," which is kind of interesting because what are birds? Birds are a descendant of dinosaurs. Talking about vertebrates, climb out of the water. So that's cool. Did it happen in that order? Probably not. You can't expect this to be perfect. You gotta understand, they wrote this 5,000 years ago in Babylon. They wrote it down 5,000 years ago in Babylon. Come on, you want this to be super scientific? Come on. Anyway, according to their kinds, and the winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful, and increase in number, and fill the water in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning, on the 5th day. 5th day. Well, you guys know what happens next, right? Well, if you've been to Sunday school, if you've ever been to church, you probably know what's next. We're next. Okay. So the animals were created first. I mean, that's what science says, right? We're kind of the end product of evolution, or one of the end products of evolution, right? The 6th day. Interesting. What does it say? Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image." I always find that interesting. Our image. Kind of goes back to that whole genderless thing. Or infinity thing. Our image. So what does that mean, image? Does that mean literally like what God looks like? And he was like, "I'm going to make this human look exactly like me." I mean, is that what he's saying? I don't know. I don't think so. It seems like to me, if you're thinking about image, right, what do you have to do when you're looking at an image? You have to imagine. Okay? So this ability to imagine, this ability to represent, this ability to symbol, which is what characterizes human beings above all other animals, is our ability to symbol and give meaning to things. People stuff. Full circle. Well, not really, because I'm going to keep going. But you get my point. So God created mankind in his own image. The idea that he's conscious of himself. The idea that he knows things. Thinks about the fact that he knows things. Metacognition. It's big time stuff. See, I'm doing it right now. It's crazy. The image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Which I always think is interesting because this is kind of the first account of the creation of human beings. And it doesn't go into that really weird figurative talk about like Adam and Eve and like reaching in and grabbing the rib. That comes next. All right, and we can analyze that in a different show, but right now we're just talking about Genesis 1. Okay, we're just talking about the beginning. So, God created them, male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." And then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it, and they will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of all the earth, and of all the birds of the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. There was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. I mean, so far I haven't found anything that necessarily contradicts my understanding of science and the Big Bang. I don't see any of that. Genesis 2. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in their vast array. By the seventh day God had finished the work and had been doing so. On the seventh day he rested from all his work. This is the seventh day. We're living in the seventh day. It's not a 24-hour period. It's an epoch. It's a time. Okay? There was the time when, the hydrogen came out. There was a time when it congealed and turned into the first star. When the first star exploded and all the atoms flew out into the solar, and into existence, right? Creating what we know as the universe, right? Those atoms congealing and forming planets, and eventually, like, we look at the Earth and how, it was all magma and things were flying in and crazy, the moon whacking and smashing and all that crazy stuff, and eventually what we got was water and land, and eventually we had the atmosphere. And you can see the stars and the sun and all that cool stuff. And then, animals come from the water onto land in the sky, and then mankind, humans. Makes sense. This is the seventh day. It's still happening. So when people get really all upset, right, and this is just a way of thinking about things, and this is just a freebie, okay? When people think about, oh man, you believe in God, but, he doesn't help you when you call. Well, here's the thing. I don't necessarily think that God is a leprechaun or a wish granter of other types of folk tales. I don't really know what God is, but I don't think he necessarily comes at your beck and call. I mean, he's resting. It's on us, man. He gave us that spark, right? According to this, if you believe this, he gave us that spark. He gave us that imagination. We can think of things that haven't happened yet. Gosh, it's literally what makes us us. The seventh day is ours. Okay? Why am I saying all this? Well, because I want to just talk about why the world doesn't have to be 6,000 years old. So there doesn't have to be a conflict between your religious beliefs and scientific evidence. It could just be the way that people interpreted this book a long time ago, before they had information about science, and before they had the scientific method, and they had all the scientific theory. I mean, that could just be it. That just could be it. So, just so you don't think that I'm totally crazy about all this, I just wanted to show you this, okay? And it's the thresholds, it's on this side, it's the thresholds of the Big History Project. Now, the Big History Project is an organization that teaches about the history of existence. And they break existence up into 8 thresholds. Now, it's interesting because when I first started looking at this, when I first started studying the Big History Project, there weren't 8 thresholds. This is a non-religious organization, right? This is a purely scientific organization. But I just want to point something out. Threshold number 1, origins of the Big Bang, cosmology. What does the Bible say about that? God created the heavens and the earth, and the earth was formless and empty, darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. The first stars and galaxies. First stars and galaxies. Let there be light. Making chemical elements. The vaults separating, the waters from the water. Right? The congealing of the planet and the water being created, actual seas being created, right? The Earth and the solar system. So now we have the forming of the Earth and the solar system. Now you can start to see the stars. Now you can start to see the sun. You can start to see the moon. Threshold 5. Life. And God called forth life out of the seas, right? Isn't that the line? Let me see. Vault in the sky. Let the water teem with living creatures. What does the Big History Project say? Oh, life. Living creatures, right? What? And then threshold 6. What makes humans different from what? The other animals. What's threshold? Threshold 6? Oh, you mean day 6? I wonder if they... I honestly... I wonder. I wonder if anybody thought of that, or if that's just a coincidence. If that's a coincidence, I don't see how Genesis is wrong. Unless you want to take a really strict reading of Genesis and say that, well, Genesis is literally true, and you're going to say that those days are 24-hour periods, go for it, man. Go for it. Threshold number 7 is agriculture. Again, the 7th day, right? This is us now taking control, using our imagination to think about how are we going to start to store food? How are we going to start to prepare for what we know is coming? War, famine, pestilence, all the different plagues that we hear about in the ancient world. Agriculture is a way to ensure a ready food supply. Of course, it also makes you a big target, and 75% of all early farmers were killed to death. I think they died of violence. So, it was a learning curve. You know, we didn't get there, and Rome wasn't built in a day. Okay? So, threshold number 8, the modern revolution. Well, that's kind of like what we got, right? That's what's going on now. This crazy revolution that we got, where I'm talking to you, and I don't even know you, man. But I'm hoping that if you're hearing my voice, you're understanding what I'm saying. One human to another human. Right? This is that revolution. Yes, the Industrial Revolution, but the Information Revolution, man. The dawning of the Age of Aquarius. This is where it starts, man. This is the pouring out of knowledge. You get that if you understand the Aquarius reference. I'm an Aquarius, by the way, if it wasn't obvious. I can't stop talking. It's a problem. Okay, so that's my point about why we don't say the world is 6,000 years old. And why we can still, well, have our faith, but still believe in science and accept it. No big deal. So, that being said, how do we know the Earth is older than that? How do we know things are older than that? Well, we had this thing called stratigraphy, right? And what we would do is we would look at the strata or the stripes when we would dig down into holes or in the cliff sides. If you've ever seen like the Grand Canyon or something, and I'll just type that in real quick so you guys can see that. Grand Canyon. I don't know why I'm saying it like that. It's slightly embarrassing, and I feel for you that you had to watch me do that. Anyway, here we have the picture of the Grand Canyon, and you can see the stripes or the strata in the earth, right? So over time, or maybe in a giant cataclysm, you wash away this sedimentary rock, or this rock that's been built up over time, and you see the strata of layers and layers of volcanic ash or organic material. Maybe it was the bottom of an ocean bed and it's got, like, you know, mountains of shellfish bodies, whatever. The point is that you look at the strata and you say, well, whatever's lower in the strata is older. Duh. Right? So whatever's lower is older. So if you found this in an upper strata, it is younger than this in a lower strata. Unless, of course, you see disturbed strata to the bottom of this cup, and you're like, someone buried that cup, so it might not be as old, right? The point is, we still didn't have a way of really measuring how old things were. Okay, that's when we started doing these great mathematical calculations, and we had astrophysicists figure out how old things were, and I'm probably leaving some other science out, and I am very sorry. I'm an anthropologist, not a doctor. Damn it, Jim. I'm sorry. That's going to happen. Okay. Grand Canyon. Yeah, okay. Stratigraphy. That's my point. Now, after that, and since, well, you know Marie Curie? You know how she discovered radium? Well, that kind of got us into this whole studying of radiation in general, okay? And what we eventually discovered, us amazing people that are people, we actually discovered that carbon atoms, carbon molecules, actually hold on to a certain amount of radiation. They are radioactive for a certain amount of time, okay? Now, I have these words here so I can read them so I don't mess this up, because sometimes I mess this up, okay? So carbon dating can be used to date organic artifacts, or things that were once alive, okay? So like think plants, animals, or plants, animals, well, fungus, protozoa, but I think those are technically animals too. Not a biologist. I don't know what to tell you. Okay. So anyway, all living things contain a radioactive isotope of carbon called carbon-14, okay, which they absorb from the sun while they are alive. Now that's the part I was thinking of. So again, not only are we stardust, but we're actually like solar batteries too, to a certain degree, right? So this carbon-14 has a half-life of 5,000 years. Now, what is a half-life? Half-life is how long it takes for half of the radiation to go away. All right, so if you think about, like, I had this chai tea, okay, and when I first got it, it was hot, right? But now it's, now it's like lukewarm, right? But from it being hot to it being lukewarm, there's a halfway point where it has lost half of its heat. It's heat radiation, right? It's radiating out of here. Okay, so the same thing kind of goes for the carbon-14 molecule. Essentially, you have this radiation that kind of radiates out of the carbon-14, and after 5,000 years, half of that radiation is gone. That's what half-life is. Okay, now for the rest of that radiation to dissipate, it takes yeah, okay. I just want to make sure I read that right. So it takes 5,000 years for the half-life. Right. Yes. But it takes 50,000 years for the rest of it to go. Okay? So by measuring the amount of radioactivity in this carbon-14 molecule, or in this carbon-14 isotope, we can roughly tell how old something that was once organic, how old it is. Like, so like if this like, I don't know, somehow was preserved kind of, I mean, for thousands of years, you could technically test what was in it to see how old it was. just the carbon-14 molecules, because this is alive, dying. I don't know. It's a gourd. I'm not sure how that works. Again, not a biologist. I don't know. Or a horticulturalist. I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't know all the things. I know some things. Maybe. Probably not. It's okay. Anyway, so 50,000 years. So essentially, you can date anything that's 50,000 years old or younger with this technology. Because after 50,000 years, all the radiation goes from the radioactive isotope, right? It goes away from the carbon-14. So it's totally gone, and there's no way to measure how old it is after that with this type of dating. Okay, so interesting sidebar. Once we figured this out, guess how old we thought humans were? And this is interesting because when I was in high school, which was roughly 20 or so odd years ago, depending on when you're watching this, the textbook said that human beings were anywhere from 50,000 to 100,000 years old. Those are probably old textbooks. They were probably from the 70s. I grew up in the suburbs on the end of the planet. But it doesn't matter. The point is, 150,000 years old, or 100,000 years old, 150,000 years old was the max. That was like the guesstimate. Why? Well, I mean, it's got to be at least 50,000 years old because we tested human bodies that were more than 50,000 years old. They had no carbon-14 radioactive isotope in them anymore. There was no more radiation in them. So they had to be older than 50,000 years old. How much older? 50. Might as well double it, right? Why not? I mean, that's more than 6,000, so just shoot for the breeze, shoot for the sky. Not sure what shoot for the breeze means. Shoot the breeze. It's late. I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, yeah, so that's carbon-14 dating. But then, well, they invented the electron microscope, which means you could look at electrons, and you could look at atoms. Electrons? Well, you can see electrons. When you look at atoms. And that's exciting because you can actually measure the amount of light given off by something that was buried in the soil. Okay, so literally you take the soil that is near whatever it is that you're trying to date, and you test the amount of light that is given off by the electrons in that soil. How cool is that? Like the light given off by the electrons in soil. Well, that allows us to go back 200,000 years. Now get this. After we discovered this dating technique, guess how far back human life was then? 200,000 to 250,000 years. Yes?
Mom, let's see upstairs.
All right. I'll be up in a minute. Now, since I used to teach this, and I think about 3 or 4 years ago, again, depending on when you're watching this, the date of humankind got pushed back even further. Close to 300,000 years. Why am I telling you all this? Because the next episode is going to be really cool. Because human beings have been in this form for 300,000 years, but we only have 6,000 years of written history? That's kind of cool. So, next time, we are going to look at what happened in that time period between, man emerging, the beginnings of man, and the time that led up to 6,000 years ago, which is when we're going to start our actual history of Western civilization. So it's going to be fun because we're going to do a lot of speculation, and we're going to look at a lot of evidence, and we're going to try to take another big picture view of human behavior. So we're going to look at things almost like a journalist. And we're going to try to see things from all different perspectives to try to see if we can piece together what exactly happened in that time period between 300,000 years ago and 6,000 years ago. It's going to be fun. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for coming out, and it should be good.